Celtic mythology in popular culture is a common feature in books, movies, television shows, and games. Celtic mythology elements appear many times in these popular culture outlets. Bloody Bones. Bloody Bones is the Mattel toy monster in My Pocket number 68. Clive Barker's Rawhead Rex is derived from the mythological figure. Rawhead and Bloody Bones is one of the main villainous figures in the Courtney Crumb run comics, presented as an almost unkillable being immune to all curses, who enjoys slaughter and whose lair contains the still-living skulls of his victims. A version of Bloody Bones appears in the Anita Blake novel Bloody Bones. Rawhead and Bloody Bones is described in a song of the same name on the Susie and the Banshees album Peep Show. Rawhead and Bloody Bones, as either one or two entities, appear in the novel The Haunting of Elizabeth Cray by Chris Wooding. He stalks his victims invisibly from behind. The victim is only vulnerable if they look over their shoulder 3 times. The following rhyme originated in Yorkshire, Lancashire. Rawhead and Bloody Bones steals naughty children from their homes, takes them to his dirty den, and they're never seen again. Bodic. The name Bodic is used to describe shadow-like creatures, invisible to most people, that appear at locations before disasters in the books are Thomas, Forever Odd, Brother Odd, and Odd Hours by Dean Koontz. These can only be seen by the character Odd. In regions of Wales and Scotland, a bodic is a term for an imp or a fairy, often one of the shape-shifting, mischievous variety. This term, though derogatory in nature, was often used with affection, translating closest to scoundrel or rascal. In various editions of the Dungeons & Dragons game, a monster called Bodak appears as an undead who has been killed by absolute evil, with a dark and shadowy mien and the ability to inspire fear. Catsith. Catsith has appeared in various installments of the Final Fantasy series, generally under the name Catesith. In Final Fantasy IV as a monster in the forests surrounding Troia, in Final Fantasy VI as an obtainable Esper, in Final Fantasy VII as a robotic side character controlled by a Shinra employee who initially spies on the other player characters and later revolts to join them permanently, and almost always appears riding a giant stuffed mannequin-like robot, and in Final Fantasy XI as a character that plays an important role in the storyline of the Final Fantasy XI Wings of the Goddess expansion. In Aria, Catsith is a character whose role is akin to being the Lord or God of the cats on both Earth and Aqua, as well as having great supernatural powers. He acts as a guardian character for the main character Akari. In the Black Company, Catsith is the name of one of the unknown shadows that befriends Mergan's son Tobo in Soldier's Life. In Yumi Miru Kushori, Catsith Nekoko is one of the 3 lead heroines. Her problem situation is a drug addiction. In Sorceress Stabber Orphan Azalea, Catsith is a key character, which the main story revolves around. Many of the games in the Megaten series feature a demon that goes by the name of Catesith, though this creature has more in common with the titular feline of Puss in Boots. In Pop and Music Party, there is an artist called Catesith. In the Disgaea games, Catesith is the second-level form of the Kit Kat monster character class. In Saint Seiya, The Lost Canvas, there is Spectre Catesith Cheshire. In the game Gloria Union, the main character Pinger is a Catsith, and appears as a dark-skinned humanoid with black cat ears and tail, and a white spot on her forehead. In the Kamen Rider Tokusatsu series, Kamen Rider Wizard, a phantom named Catsith serves as the monster of episodes 4 and 5. In the Dresden Files novel Cold Days by Jim Butcher, Catsith is a powerful and dangerous fairy who serves Queen Mab, monarch of the Winter Court of the Sidhe. Catesith appears as an enemy in La Mulana. Here it appears as an all-white or all-golden cat riding a bull, earning it the nickname Cat Bull. In the MMORPG Mabinogi, Cat Siths are human-feline hybrids that inhabit Rundle Dungeon, both as regular spawns and as a boss. In the Sons of Thestian, Book 1 of the Harmatia Cycle series by M. E. Vaughan, the character Phioma Chada is a cat Sidhe, and is able to transform into a giant winged cat. Crumdove has been featured in Bernard Cornwell's Warlord Chronicles in The Winter King, an enemy of God. Here Crumdove is described as an evil and malevolent god who is an Irish god brought to post-Roman Britain by King Dianwich. Crumdove was described as a crippled and dark god. Dullahan. In the Disney film Darby Ogle and the Little People, a Dullahan makes an appearance as a coachman of the Coister Bodar. Upon the arrival of the death coach, the Dullahan calls out Darby's name and orders him to board the coach. Darby reluctantly complies, and is borne into the heavens on the way to the afterlife. But his life is saved by his friend, the wily leprechaun King Brian Connors. King Brian tricks him into wishing a fourth wish, negating the previous 3 wishes, and causing Darby to be ejected from the coach. In Treasure of the Rudras, Dullahan is a floating cuirass and the arm pieces of the armor, and appears as a common enemy in the Haunted Castle. In the Castlevania series, the Dullahan is typically one of the game's earlier bosses, carrying its head and attacking the hero with the lance. In later games, he's a headless knight, carrying a demonic shield inscribed with a face which acts as its head, or he is a headless horseman riding the front end of an undead horse back and forth while wielding a sword or spear. He is also in Castlevania Curse of Darkness as a boss near the end of the game. In Golden Sun, The Lost Age, and its sequel Golden Sun, Dark Dawn, Dullahan is an incredibly difficult optional boss, appearing as a headless knight in purple armor with a large sword who guards the game's most powerful summon. Generally considered the most difficult boss in the game, due to his use of exceedingly powerful attacks, one of which has a chance to instantly kill most of your party, and the ability to use your summons against you. This mythological creature also appears as an enemy in Lufia 2, Rise of the Sinistrals. However, in the English version its name got mistranslated into Dullahan. In Vagrant Story, Dullahan is a type of animated armor, always without a helmet, and appears mostly in the Undercity section of Le Monde after you defeat him in the wine cellars. In Ragnarok Online, Dullahan are heavily armored monsters who remove the heads to use as a weapon against players. They are fairly difficult and appear in the fields of Nilheim, as well as in the town itself. Dullahan is a mini-boss in the game Final Fantasy Mystic Quest to top Mount Gale. He also appears in Final Fantasy VI as the boss in Daryl's Tomb in the form of a skeletal charioteer pulled by purple flaming skeletal horses. They also appeared in Final Fantasy III, IX, and XII, and as a non-boss enemy in Final Fantasy Legend III. In Dragon Quest VIII, the Dullahans are like the ones in Castlevania, headless armors with a somewhat expressive face on the shield and wielding a flail. They appear as the enemies Dark Dullahan, and Hell's Gatekeeper. The Dullahan version is also an obtainable monster in the spin-off Dragon Quest Monsters, specifically the Joker version. In Shining Force, sword-wielding creatures who serve once as a boss and afterwards as minions bearing the aforementioned resemblance also appear, but are more in purple color and fully centaur. They do not have obvious magical powers, though they can put allies to sleep, poison them and carry the dreaded Doomblade, which can kill the foe instantly. Strangely, they are absent from Shining Force 2. In the Monster Rancher series, there exists a monster named Dullahan that's a hollow suit of armor specializing in strong attack and defense. The Dullahan is an enemy in Devil May Cry 3, Dante's Awakening. It is a hovering suit of armor whose only weak point is a crystal on its backside. In Capcom's cult classic Gotcha Force, there are both Ghost Knights and an Elemental Knights that can be fought and or used by players. Both of them are hollow, ghostly suits of armor that float around, and are completely without heads. The gigantic swords that they wield have the heads near the bottom of the blade and merged into the pommel. In the square fighting game Tabal No. 1 for PlayStation, Dullahan appears as a possessed headless suit of armor in the game's dungeon mode. He has a very low life bar which allows the player to defeat him quickly, but he also possesses a very high offense rate which requires the player to exercise caution when fighting him. In Disgaea, Dullahan's of the third level of the Dark Knight monster class. In the arcade game Ghouls 'n Ghosts, Dullahan is the first end-of-level boss. He appears as a large statue which sheds its stone skin as the player approaches. He then lifts his head from his shoulders and carries it above and in front on his body as it spits fire at the player. In Sega's Shining Force, The Legacy of Great Intention, once the party has reached prompt, Durahans appear as regular enemies, appearing as headless centaurs in armor with a face on their stomachs. In Valkyrie Profile, Dullahans are common enemies found on dungeons represented by a headless animated suit of heavy armor. In World of Warcraft, Dullahan appears in the Scarlet Monastery in the Graveyard part as a boss for the in-game holiday Hallow's End, as the Headless Horseman who after receiving enough damage loses its head and is forced to chase it around. In Magician's Quest, Mysterious Times, during one of the mysteries, the player needs to help the head of a Dullahan to make amends with its body. In Durarara, Celtic Sturluson, one of the main characters, is a Dullahan. In Fables, Mr. Dark is referred to as Dullahan by the North Wind. In Mabinogi, the Dullahan is the boss enemy for the Shadow mission Ghosts of Partholon. Quote, he is mounted on a hell steed, which counts as an individual enemy. In Japanese manga series Monster Musume by Okayado features a female Dullahan named Lala who is one of the 7 extra species characters living, with protagonist Kimi Hito Kuruso. Farkan. Farkan is Mattel Toys monster in My Pocket number 114. Gillidu are a race in the role-playing game Changeling, the Dreaming Kelpie. The film Into the West features a Kelpie. The young adult novel Tithe, a modern fairy tale by Holly Black, shows a Kelpie. The main character, Kay, sees her friend, Janet, walk away from a party with a strange boy. The strange boy then turns into a white horse and drowns Janet. On the forum website Gaia Online, there is an avatar item called Kelpo Lock which seems to be based on Kelpie, allowing for various water horse-related avatar looks, even including a Celtic cross. Knocker, a British TV channel broadcast a children's TV show in the 1980s called The Knockers. The video game Darklands featured Knockers as enemies later in the game. Knockers, a Cathin White Wolf's changeling, the Dreaming Tommy Knockers is a fantasy heavy metal song performed by the band Blind Guardian on the 1990 album Tales from the Twilight World. In Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels, the Knockermen are dwarfs who are trained in safely detonating pockets of fire damp. In Tony Ditalitzi and Holly Black's The Spiderwick Chronicles, the Grace Children are helped by a Knocker who inhabits the Dwarven Quarry. In the MMORPG Ragnarok Online, Knockers are the most populated monster, appearing in Thor Volcano's second floor. They appear as little miner-looking monsters and randomly place mines. Corrigan. Corrigans are characters in the Book of the Stars trilogy by Eric Lom. Corrigans appear as the main antagonists in The Sons of Thestian, the first book of the Harmatia Cycle series by M.E. Vaughan. Mero. The trading card game Magic: The Gathering has a block named Lorwyn which is heavily based on European folklore. Mero are a new version of merfolk. Mero are an aquatic subrace of ogres in the Dungeons & Dragons game. Pesh. Pesh is used as a pejorative term for the halfling-like race in the 1988 film Willow by George Lucas. It might be assumed the idea comes from this myth. In the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game, Pesh are elemental creatures from the inner plane of Earth that are based on this myth. In the Minecraft mod Thaumcraft, the Pegs appear in magical regions, and are represented as avaricious gnomes of great strength and speed. Pooka. In the Mary Chase play Harvey and its 1950 film adaptation, the title character Harvey is a Pooka, in the form of a very tall humanoid white rabbit. In Emma Bull's 1987 book War for the Oaks, the Pooka is a mischievous but ultimately trustworthy shapeshifter who takes the form of a large black dog. In the Spiderwick Chronicles, the Pooka is a shapeshifter that resembles a black rabbit monkey-like creature. He is smarter than his speech can demonstrate. In China Clugston's Blue Monday comic, heroine Blue encounters her Pooka, Seamus, who is a giant, gaseous, kilt-bearing otter who often causes more mischief than anything else. In the 1959 Disney film Darby Ogle and the Little People, Darby's horse turns into a Pooka. In the 1985 book Cruel Lie, a caustic yarn, the 8th Xanth novel by Piers Anthony, a Pooka befriends the main character. He is a smart, helpful ghost horse with ratting chains and ends up being named Pooka. In the final song of Final Fantasy's album, He Poos Clouds, the Pooka is depicted as a sort of anti-muse, declaiming the composer for writing about things which he does not believe and which don't exist. At the conclusion of the song, the Pooka flies away, and Owen Pallett puts down his violin, saying, "I leave it down, never again." The Magic: The Gathering trading card game features 3 cards based on Pooka. In Flann O'Brien's novel At Swim Two Birds there is a Pooka named McPhillimy. In the 2000 Jonathan Glazer film Sexy Beasts, a malicious, Harvey-style Pooka haunts the protagonist, Gal, in his dreams and waking life. This Pooka becomes synonymous with both the title and the antagonist, Don Logan, replacing Don in the latter portion of the movie as Gal's tormentor. In Odin's Sphere, a 2007 game for PlayStation 2, one of the main characters is Cornelius, the Pooka prince, who is transformed into a Pooka, and finds a city of other Pookas who are all trying to lift the curse and become human. They take the form of an anthropomorphized rabbit. In the 1980s Namco arcade game Dig Dug, one of the 2 enemies that you need to defeat to clear each level is called the Pooka.